live in a police state. You know you live in a police state. If you didn't know, I'm here to tell you. You live in a police state.
I always think, as long as Doug Casey's still walking around a free man, I'm safe.
Taxes are theft. That's not really true, by the way. Taxes is robbery, because robbery is the threat of force. You know, theft is when you just sort of sneak by and swipe something and take off, right? So don't, let's call it what it is. Let's be honest about it. Taxes are robbery. Think of this as two separate areas of the justice system. We've got procedure, which is how do we sort of process cases through the system. Then we've got the substantive law. The procedure's not that bad. If you made me the king of the procedure, there's a lot of things I'd change, but it's really not that terrible. We do a pretty decent job, not perfect, but pretty decent at figuring out who's really guilty and who's not guilty, which really just means the state hasn't proven their case. But it doesn't matter if what they're guilty of is a bunch of stupid shit that shouldn't be against the law in the first place. The question is not whether these drugs are bad for you. The question is, would society be improved by legalizing it? Marijuana doesn't ruin people's lives. The drug war ruins people's lives.
First off, I don't think it's right to generalize all people who are in law enforcement any more than I would generalize everybody in any group. I will give you some insights, though, from my personal experiences, having sat across on many occasions from DEA agents. I'm sitting across the table from them before the festivities begin, and we're sort of off the record, and I say, hey man, how's that drug war thing going? Gonna win anytime soon? And they generally laugh, and I laugh too, because we all know it's a complete joke. This tragedy, and I think it's very important to note, happened in a gun-free school zone. This is a gun grabber's heaven. This is a spot where nobody can have a gun in a state that's got very strong gun regulations. It's not right that a citizen would have to stand and defend against a felony prosecution without having a fair presentation to the members of the community that make up the grand jury. I feel like our criminal law just hasn't caught up with everything else around us. Yes, Mr. White was driving a truck. Yes, it had marijuana, and yes, it had 600 pounds. We somehow pretend, we entertain a fiction that because there was 600 pounds of marijuana, this is somehow a worse case, or Mr. White is somehow a worse guy than someone who maybe had 6 pounds or 6 ounces. I wonder what arguments were made during the last big mistake our country made in this area during alcohol prohibition. I wonder if prosecutors stood up and said, Judge, he's a terrible guy because he's got lots of cases of beer on the truck. Not just a few cases, Judge, but lots of cases of beer. And so I think about this now, and I wonder if the Budweiser guy who drives the longer truck, if he's a worse guy, a more dangerous guy than the Budweiser guy who drives the smaller truck. And it sounds ridiculous, Judge, because it is ridiculous. So what? Nobody has a right to force another person to respect a symbol. Really what the controversy is people are just upset because other people aren't respecting things that they hold dear. Well, sorry, if you live in a free society, that's life. Other people don't have to respect things that you respect. One of the factors that you are required to consider, which I know you will, are the views of the victim. The victim wants a bond. The victim wants Officer Brailsford treated like everybody else. You would think that they would step up and say, you know what, we get to compensate her. She's clearly been harmed, she's clearly been damaged, but nope. I always tell people, what I'm trying to sell you on is that you ought to be in charge of you, and I ought to be in charge of me. I don't know why that is so damn hard to understand.